So, I just got to see what was one of my most anticipated films of the year, and after watching it, is easily one of the most shocking movies of the year. Of course, I am talking about Conclave. This is the brand new film directed by Edward Berger, the same guy that was responsible for making All Quiet on the Western Front from a couple years ago. One of my favorite movies of that year, and my main complaint with that movie is that I was not able to see it in a movie theater because it was made on Netflix. Now, finally, I get to see an Edward Berger film on the big screen. Conclave, which is based on a novel of the same name, is a film about, well, the Catholic Church and the Pope. So in this movie, the movie starts with the Pope dying. Oh no, the Pope is dead. So what happens now is that all the cardinals in the church, if you didn't know what cardinals are, they're kind of like the most powerful priests, they all come together to vote on the new Pope. This is an actual process that happens in real life when a new Pope has to be selected. And essentially what we have here is Game of Thrones and the Catholic Church. It's essentially a politic type movie where all these different characters have their own ambitions, they all have their own goals, and you're just trying to figure out who's who and who's going to win the Pope, you know, the Pope position. Meanwhile, the whole thing is being moderated by Ralph Fiennes, who plays kind of the dean of the church, this guy who's in charge of making sure this process goes through steady and everybody is on their best behavior. It's a movie that's high intensity. It's almost a thriller and also kind of a mystery, trying to figure out who's who and like the backgrounds of all these different players that are in this game. This movie is, like I just said, Game of Thrones. It's Succession. If you're into those kinds of movies and stories, this is for you. It's a movie that works on a lot of different levels, mainly in its performances and also in its beautiful visuals. The one thing I'll say about Edward Berger as a filmmaker, something I noticed in All Quiet on the Western Front, is he is an incredible filmmaker when it comes to visuals. I don't know who the cinematographer working on this movie was. There are just so many shots, though, that are gorgeous in so many different ways the characters are framed, and just the world of this area looks that are just, it's brilliant, it's stunning. The performances in this movie, top to bottom, are incredible. The one that's getting the most talk, of course, is Ralph Fiennes. Most people are saying that he is a top contender for the Oscar. It's probably going to end up being between him and Adrien Brody. Now, I tend to lean towards Adrien Brody of being the performance of the year, but this is one of Ralph Fiennes' career best. This performance is very different than a lot of the other big Oscar-y performances, even some of his own big Oscar-y performances he's had in his career, because it's a very quiet, subtle role. This character is not very loud with his emotions and his opinions. He's very kind of contained, and most of the performance is in the eyes, the facial expressions, and the movements. But this character is just so lovely to just watch and be around. He's a guy that you just like. He seems like the perfect priest who's really open-minded and sort of loving and caring and wants this process to be good. He doesn't exactly have that Oscar moment, this big loud scene where he screams and yells, but I don't think that means he can't win the award, and that doesn't mean the performance isn't good. It's kind of like a stupid thing. You need an Oscar moment. Cillian Murphy won the Oscar last year, and I would argue that he doesn't really have an Oscar moment in Oppenheimer. It's another one of those quiet, subtle roles that's mostly done with the eyes. But Ralph Fiennes here is absolutely brilliant, and yeah, he's definitely deserving of the award if he eventually gets it. I also found Stanley Tucci to be particularly good, but he's great in just absolutely everything he's in. What kind of character is he playing here? He's playing Stanley Tucci as a cardinal. Yeah, you know what you're getting. But it's still amazing. I love Stanley Tucci. Sergio Castellitto plays another cardinal, this Italian guy who's sort of wants to get the church back to what it used to be, wants to bring it back, and I also really loved his performance. I thought it was really powerful and really strong, and it did what it needed to do. I also want to compliment the score in this movie. It is brilliant. Of course, you've heard it in the trailers, that violin thing. Yeah, it plays throughout the entire frickin' movie, and I was not complaining at all. It's the same thing kind of like with All Quiet on the Western Front that had that very loud, you know, score that became obnoxious deep into the Oscar season when it kept getting played over and over and over. This is a very similar score that I think will start to annoy people when at the Oscars every single 5 minutes you hear dun 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 dun. But I love it, and it's brought such like a tense tone to the overall film. I think it's brilliant. Now, why is this film so shocking? I can't really talk about it without spoiling it, but the one thing I will say is this film is a thriller and a mystery, and there are a lot of twists and turns throughout this film. Are all of these twists and turns satisfying, and does the film make it to a satisfying conclusion? Because in a movie like this, a big part of it is pulling off the ending. The big thriller and question of this film is who's going to be the Pope. You have all these people trying to be the Pope. Who's it going to be? And whoever it ends up being and how we get to that point needs to be satisfying for the rest of the film to work, because I will say about 80% of this film is brilliant. It's masterful. The journey to get to that point had me hooked and thrilled throughout the entire 2-hour, 20-minute runtime of this film, and I loved it. But then you get to the ending, and for me, there was just one twist too many. There are a lot of twists in this movie, and a lot of them work, and the film kind of goes down this similar path of, we have a favorite to be the next Pope, but, oh wait, they got a problem, and now we have a new favorite to be the Pope, but, oh wait, there's a problem. And it keeps going and going and going, and finally you get to the final Pope, and there's another, but wait! And this one I felt like just did not make sense story-wise for what they were building. There wasn't as much of a setup for it. And I know a lot of people out there are going to complain, people that are Catholics and are very religious, because obviously it's a moment that's supposed to be saying, hey, Catholics, you should, like, be a little more inclusive and accepting, whatever. Now, I'm not Catholic, I'm not religious, so I don't get offended at anything like that. I can understand why some religious folk out there are going to be offended by this movie. I don't care. It's not my place to be offended on behalf of religious people. I don't care. That's not why this twist doesn't work. This twist doesn't work because the purpose of it is to offend. The purpose is to be like, out of nowhere, boom! Hope you're offended. That better have struck you to your core. Now let's lecture you on what the message of this movie is. And that's why the twist does not work in this story. It just doesn't work. It comes out of absolutely nowhere, and it is just there for the purpose, I think, of lecturing. And to me, that just never works in film. It did get a laugh out of me, though. When the twist is revealed in this movie, I laughed very audibly hard because it's just so kind of wild. I heard it set up better in the book, and maybe that's the case. In the film, I thought it was so ridiculous. Yet again, I don't have the problem with the actual twist itself. If it was just set up better in the themes and the story of the movie, maybe it would have made more sense to me, but it just came out of left field. Even the guy next to me, who I think is another sort of cinephile, I don't know if he was a reviewer, but even he, I heard him audibly say, well, that's just one twist too many. I'm like, yeah, it was just such a bizarre twist that ended up making me feel a lot emptier about the movie, where I was so hooked in at one point. At one point, I thought, wow, this might be the best movie of the year. This is incredibly thrilling, incredibly tense. I lost that feeling as we got to the conclusion of the movie, and instead of thinking about the brilliant performance of Ralph Fiennes, the gorgeous direction from Edward Berger, the amazing music, and just the overall incredibleness of this sort of Game of Thrones in Rome, Game of Thrones in, you know, the Catholic Church, instead of thinking about, wow, that twist was so ridiculous. Which is a shame, but yet again, I'm not going to blame Edward Berger or anybody in the film involved for the twist, because it's in the book. And yet again, if it's better in the book, let me know down below. I thought the setup for it didn't make sense, because the story was really leaning in one direction. And yet again, I understand that the sort of themes of this film is sort of a church reform versus non-church reform, right? Trying to make the church a little more modern and sort of liberal in a way, versus bringing it backwards. I understand that was a very, very large theme, but I thought they did a good job of addressing that theme in a very honest way before the twist. But I don't know, I can already tell people are gonna be like, oh, you're this type of phobic because you didn't like the twist in this movie. It's like, no, it's not what it is. It's just watch the movie, because it comes out of nowhere, right? Either way, though, I still had a really good time with Conclave. There's a lot to love here. If you're somebody who's really, really Catholic and religious, you're gonna absolutely hate this movie. Just put it that way. But if you're somebody who just wants to see sort of a politics in the church, if you want to see something like The Two Popes, which came out a couple years ago, but more fictional and more high intensity, if you want to see a great Ralph Fiennes performance and an awesome score that just is going to stick with you, this is a movie to check out. It's definitely one of the better films playing in theaters right now. I will give Conclave a 4 out of 5. Definitely check this one out, and yeah, let me know what you think about the twist. Maybe it's just me. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like this video, subscribe for more notifications. I'll see you in the next one.